Hey guys, how's it going? I am Sara Oehler and I'm the Sales and Marketing Manager for my very favorite company, Softflex Company. I have been with them for about 19 years now, and I have done all sorts of things with their variety of beading wires. One thing that I really love to do is I love to knit using a knitting spool with our beading wire and our craft wire. So I am going to show you all about that today. I'm really excited to share some of the projects we've made in the past and sort of revisit a tool that I haven't been playing around with as much this last year, but still has so much potential for new things to be made. So I'm looking forward to getting a chance to enjoy that with you guys today. So I'm gonna flip you down and we'll just kind of launch in and start talking about the knitting spools and the beading wire and all sorts of cool stuff today. Let me flip you around here. Hopefully you're all doing well today on this beautiful Wednesday. Here in Sonoma, it is gorgeous outside. Pretty much all summer in Sonoma is awesome. So I have these two books picked out to talk with you about because they both have projects using the knitting spool. I love the knitting spools, and I used to use them quite frequently, and I've found just recently in the last year or so I haven't used them as much. So I'm very, very, very excited to go over them with you today. And I'm super excited that we're going to be offering a discount on them because we just got a new stock in. So there's the information for the discount we're going to offer. If you want to purchase them, you can find them in our website. But just to get started, we've got two books here that have projects with the knitting spool. The Bracelet project booklet is $11.95, and it has projects with not only the knitting spool but also kumihimo, macrame board, magical crimpers, all sorts of stuff. But it has two great knitting spool projects. So I was going to go over that. So it shows you all the instructions that I'm going to show you today. So if you do better with pictures and wording, this kind of breaks down what you'll be doing on two different pages. And then there are two designs in here by Kristen Fagan. The first one's gorgeous. It uses chrysoprase and turquoise beading wire, and it turned out really pretty. And I've actually got the real authentic design here to look at, which is pretty sweet. Hey Jenny, hey Holly, I'm so glad you guys are here. I think we're gonna really enjoy today. We're gonna be really exploring. I don't know that I'm gonna make a finished piece, but I'm gonna show you three different styles of knitting. I'm gonna show you knitting on all three of the knitting spools, and then I actually think I'm gonna do some craft wire too. So stay tuned, we've got a lot to cover. Look how pretty the turquoise and the chrysoprase look when they're knitted together. How that chrysoprase just sort of pops off the turquoise. It's amazing the texture you can get on the knitting spool when you do multiple colors together. They can look really, really gorgeous. And then the second design in this book, I actually have that one here too, funny enough. Normally I don't have all the designs here, so this has been handy. This is a black and antique brass. This is a class that I actually teach on a somewhat regular basis at local bead stores, and it's a really easy project using Softflex 014 in black and antique brass. But again, there's instructions here in this great little bracelet project booklet, which you can also find at softflexcompany.com. And then my very first book, which is actually out of print. It was like 6 years ago when this came out, and through Kalmbach, and they're not printing anymore. I think we have the last of the supply here at Softflex, and there is a whole chapter on knitting in here. This is one of my favorites. This one's by Jamie Hogsett, who is my co-author for this book, and she actually handled the whole knitting spool chapter. but this is definitely one of my favorites. Look at the colors she used. She used peridot, garnet, and tanzanite in this one. Isn't that just a gorgeous color combination? I love those colors together. And then she made some really funky little earrings. And this one's really cool, using the chrysoprase, the citrine, and the yellow, which yellow was just in our latest kit that we put out, our Neon Nights kit. And then she did this one. So there's just like a lot of possibilities with the knitting spools. So here's another great place where you can find more tutorials. If you really like this video, then I would check out these two books. They'll be a good fit for you. Okay, so I've got a couple things to talk about before we really launch in. We just started a soft touch sale. It's 10% off on any diameter, any length. And if you're a registered designer, that's on top of your designer discounts. So it's a fantastic time to stock up on your soft touch. And a lot of people still ask me, what's the difference between soft flex and soft touch? So soft touch is 50% softer and more flexible. So basically what that means is it drapes a little bit more like a thread. It's just a little bit softer and a little bit more drapey. It's the same construction, same strength, same durability, just a little bit softer. So it's great for things like pearls, especially like anything lightweight where you really want a really beautiful soft drape. You're gonna get a better drape with soft touch. And usually if somebody loves soft touch, they love soft touch. It's the only brand that they use. So it's a great one to try out. Okay, and then the other thing I wanted to talk about is we did, after doing that Eclectica design challenge, where I used the garnet, the tanzanite, and the pink tourmaline, we did add a new trio option with these colors. We're calling it the Bloom Trio. And you can find it right on the home page because it's a new product, so it's pretty easy to locate. I'm sure my coworkers will add a link here. I'm going to actually use these colors today in my knitting demonstration so we can kind of see how they look. But they look fantastic when you group them together like I did in this braiding. Or individually, they're all just really gorgeous colors. So I want you guys to check that out too if you haven't already grabbed one of these. It's a limited time option. I don't know how long we'll keep it up there for. We're playing around with the idea of putting more color combinations up like this, you know, from month to month, but we're kind of just deciding. We're still working on deciding. So if you guys react well to this, then that will definitely push us to do more color palettes that you can use in your beadwork. So that was the Bloom Trio, and now I think I can get going. I did all my errands here on my check sheet. So knitting spools, we've got 3 different knitting spools, and what makes them different is that each one has 1 more peg. So this is what we call a 3-peg knitting spool. It has 3 pegs, a 4-peg knitting spool, and then a 5-peg knitting spool. And I'm actually going to demonstrate the same, there's 3 styles of knitting as well. I'm going to demonstrate the same style of knitting on each one of these so we can compare the difference in size that will come out. And I'm not going to do a full bracelet, but I'll do enough that you can kind of get an idea of how it's going to change depending on what size knitting spool you choose. So I'm going to start with the pink tourmaline on the 3-peg knitting spool. And you can do more than 1 wire. You can do any diameter of soft flex. I'm using the medium because that's where most of the colors come in. But I'm going to, I could do all 3 colors if I wanted to. or 2 colors. I could do 014, 010. Really, it's up to you, and that gives a lot of variation in how the design turns out too, depending on what diameter you choose or what color. So I'm going to go ahead and string my wire down through the center of the knitting spool. Our knitting spools are made here in the USA. They're a very high quality, dense wood. And then the manufacturer uses cotter pins, which have a sort of a soft side on them. They're equally placed around the spool, and they're very strong. You can really tug on these and they're not going to break down. So one of the difficulties with some of the plastic knitting spools on the market is those plastic pegs, when you've got a stainless steel wire pulling on them, can really start bending back and forth and then eventually snap. So it's important that you get a good quality knitting spool like this guy here. And then it comes with a stylus, and you'll see how I use that in the knitting process here. So I'm going to go ahead. I've actually numbered this one. Sometimes I number them like a clock, which is what I did here, 12 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Sometimes I number them with numbers. It just depends, you know, who I'm teaching. And it doesn't really matter which way you do it, as long as everyone understands what's going on. Okay, so I'm going to take my wire, and for a single knit, I'm going to wrap around 12. I'm going to wrap from left to right so that the wire is coming through the center down to 8 o'clock. So did you guys kind of see that? So I went on the left of 12, around the peg, through the center over to 8, and then I'm going to go around 8, through the center over to 4. For a single knit, I'm going to come around the outside of 12, above the loop that I already created. Now this is style 1 knitting, which we have available in a video on YouTube and on our website. So we'll definitely post a link there so you can watch it and rewatch it over and over. And I'm going to go over it a few times because I'm going to do it on each of these knitting spools today, so you'll be able to hopefully catch it if it's something you're trying to learn. So I'm going to let go a little bit from the bottom where my tail is down here, let go a little bit, and that will give me enough slack that I can slide into the center here, pull the wire out and up and over into the middle. And then I'm just going to gently tug from the bottom, and that will tighten up what's going on in the middle. And then I'm on here, so now I can let this go. At the beginning, if you let it go, and I'll show you on the next one, it'll just spring free. So you've got to get it sort of anchored down before you can let go. So now the next trick here is, you can see it wants to go underneath the first wire at 8. I'm going to pull that wire down and pull the new wire at the top. You always want to add your new wire at the top. I'm going to split between the two of them, and again tug to the center. And I'm just going to go around and around a few times because I want to make enough of a chain that we can actually see how it looks, and we can compare it to the 4 and the 5 peg. So once you get going, you can see you can go super fast because it gets really easy. Once you've got the pattern down and you know what you're doing, it doesn't take a long time to really go through a project fairly quickly. And I'm not going to do a full bracelet because that would just take too long on all 3 knitting spools, but I will do enough that we can get a good look at the thickness of what comes out of here and compare it to the others. Kristen says she loves doing this on road trips. This is a very relaxing road trip. I also like to do it when I'm just like watching a movie, because I can just sort of mindlessly work on it. This is a great project for those out there that love to knit and love to make jewelry, you can now do both. And if you wanted to add beads into the actual knitting part, like what I'm doing now, you would string all your beads on first on your spool, and then you would feed them in as you go, and you would get something that looks like this. This is done on a 3-peg knitting spool as well. I just did it with the green turquoise, and I added the beads in as I was knitting. And this is nice because it doesn't even need a clasp because it's springy. So it actually goes right over my wrist for a really fun, easy design. And you can wear this on the top or the bottom. Isn't that cool? Or you can put a clasp here if you wanted to, but I kind of like this round connector piece. Makes it extra special. Okay, so let's do just a little bit more. I'd like to see it coming down far enough that we can get to a pretty good comparison. Let's see, Holly says, showing my age, but we used to do this with a wooden spool and nails as a kid. Never know what to do after that. I hear that all the time, Holly, when I show the knitting spool. Yeah, this is an old tool. This is not something that just came out of nowhere. Recently, the knitting spools have been around forever and ever. It's just that they have made this one in such a nice way that you can actually use your soft flex stainless steel product on it, which is really nice. It would be a lot harder with just a nail because you can't slip the wire. I don't know if you're seeing how I'm doing it. I'm slipping the wire over the cotter pin, and that makes this particular tool super handy. And then just it being so sturdy. It's really such a sturdy tool. Okay, so you can kind of see, along with my name, that it's coming out the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and take this off now. I mean, it's still short, but it's long enough that we can kind of get an idea. So when you trim it off, you always want to leave a pretty long length, because you're going to actually take this wire that you've been stringing and you're going to feed it back through the loop on each peg. So can you kind of see how I strung it through that loop on 12? And then I'm going to string it through the loop on 8. And then I'm going to string it through the loop on 4. So I went through all 3 of them, and then I can just slide these loops off the ends, and I can go ahead and close that up. So this is medium soft flex, pink tourmaline on the 3-peg knitting spool. Now I'm going to do a different color on the 4-peg, and then I'll do a different color on the 5-peg, and then we can compare. The idea is that the 3-peg has less wire running through it, so it should be the skinniest, and the 5-peg has the most wire running through each section, so it's going to be the thickest, and we can kind of compare and contrast what that looks like. And I think that'll help people sort of decide which knitting spool would be right for them. So now we're going to do the 4-peg knitting spool, and I'm going to do the 4-peg, I think, with the tanzanite, since it's handy. The 4-peg doesn't have any numbers on it, but it's a very similar setup, and I'm going to do the same style of knitting for all 3 so that they're really comparable. We can really see the size difference. So this is the 4-peg. This time I'm using medium again, but this time I'm going to use a tanzanite color just so we can differentiate really easily between all 3 of them. And I'm going to start at the top. If this was my 12 o'clock, I'm going to wrap from left to right. I'm going to go over to 9 o'clock, down to 6 o'clock, over to 3 o'clock. And this is where I was saying, if you were to let go, this is what happens. Until you're anchored on, you don't want to let go from the bottom. You have to hold on down here, and then you have to hold the wire tight around the peg. So that was 12, 9, 6, 3, and then I'm just gonna let go a little bit from the bottom as I come around the top of that first peg. And I will take my bottom wire up and over into the center and then just gently tug from the bottom. I'm going to loosen out some wire here for my spool. And then I'm just going to start really going at it again like I did last time, so we can get a long enough piece that we can compare to the last one and see what the difference in size will look like. Oh, Rochelle, do you have one of these knitting spools? They're so fun. I miss using it. The other day, I saw we were ordering some more and I thought, oh my gosh, I haven't used the knitting spool in ages. You can kind of see how the design's starting to come together in the middle as I go around and around. Now it's 4 pegs, so it's going to take me a little bit longer because I've got more pegs to deal with here. And again, I'm doing style 1 from the website. We have 3 styles, and I'll show you the other styles too. I just first wanted to kind of demonstrate the difference in size between the 3, the 4, and the 5 pegs. So those of you that don't have one already can make an educated choice about what would make the most sense for you. Hey Anya, your beads looked amazing. Anya's beads from a live sale went all the way to Germany. All of your live sale baskets from last week are fantastic. I was so jealous yesterday as I was taking pictures. There's so many pretty baskets full of those carved roses and lots of color. It was really, really lovely. Kristen says, I feel like style 1 is a great beginner style, maybe because it's the first one I learned. I think it's the easiest. I think it's the easiest one to do. There's just a little bit less wire, a little less complication. So style 1's nice. Style 1's also nice because it creates, you can see a chamber inside of it, and you can actually put the beads down the center and string them in the middle. So you'll have like little crystals sort of peeking out, which is really cool. Holly asks, what is your favorite, 3, 4, or 5? Just curious. I use all of them. However, I tend to like bigger bracelets, bigger jewelry. So I think I tend to use the 5 peg the most, but I do use all of them. And you'll see when we get done with using each one, the difference. You know, you'll have one that's pretty tiny and thin, and then one that's much, much thicker on the 5 peg. And I guess it just depends on how I'm feeling that day, because I definitely use all 3 of them. If I were just starting out, I'd probably get a 4 peg, which is what I'm using right now. It's a good starting, and then once you've mastered, you can always get the 3 or the 5, depending on if you want to go thicker or thinner, or 3 and 5 if you really get into it and want to do all the sizes. So you can see how it's looking going down the center. Isn't that kind of cool, like a little spider web? Yeah, starting with the 3 would be totally good too. Yeah, 3 or 4. It's just less wire to deal with, which is nice. And I want to go just enough that we can really do some comparing. And then I'm also going to show you guys at the end how to attach to something like a clasp or a connector to finish it off. So I want to have enough wire on these that I can really show that to you. Pretty cool, huh? Rochelle says 4 is good too. Which one do you have, Rochelle? Do you have a 3? They're really handy. I've been trying for years to get them to make a 6 because six of these around would allow you to have a 3 and a 6 at the same time, and I would be able to make an even wider bracelet, but I haven't accomplished my goal yet. Maybe one of these days we'll be able to expand to a 6. I think that would be awesome. Okay, so I've got my wire knitted long enough. Again, I'm going to leave quite a few inches of extra wire when I snip because I have to actually take this wire and go through the loops on each of these pegs. So sometimes I'll just kind of pull back that last loop that I added and then just find a spot where you can kind of string it through the loop that's around the peg. Get all the way around. I've got one more, and then we can pull this one off of here and see how it looks. So you can see it's already sort of cinching it like a drawstring bag. Yeah, wouldn't 6 be good? Oh, Rochelle has 3 and 4. Anna says, I'd have to start with a 3 or 4. I'm glad to hear that you can incorporate beads with this. You can definitely incorporate beads, and I'll talk more about that too. So this is a 4, so you can already see the size difference between a 3 and a 4. And now I'm going to work on the 5 so we can see the last size, and we'll do that one in garnet, the 3rd color in our bloom trio. And maybe I'll even do all 3 colors together so we can see what that looks like, because I bet it looks fantastic. Okay, so let me see if I have some seed beads I can just throw on here so we can add seed beads in as we go. Let's see what I have in my magic bag over here. I have some copper ones. I don't know that they look really great with this garnet, but it'll at least give the point. Jenny says, I never did any of this as a child. I feel so deprived. Oh, no. I didn't either, but I hear it all the time. All the time. So I'm just going to pick up a few seed beads here, and that way we can add in a few seed beads as we go, and you guys can kind of see how that would work. So to add the seed beads into the design, you're going to actually string them first onto your wire. And I won't do the whole thing in seed beads because that just will take me a little too long. But I'll add a few in the middle so we can see what it looks like and how to do it. All right, so we've got our 3 peg, we've got our 4 peg. Now we're going to do our 5 peg knitting spool. Ta-da! Here we go. So I've got my seed beads sliding down the wire. I'm using the garnet medium, same diameter that I used before, but this time I'm going to do the garnet color. And again, for those of you that have just joined us, you can do any diameter of beading wire, from our 010 very fine all the way up to the heavy. It's just going to make a little bit more of a dense project if you use a heavier wire, and a little bit softer of a project if you use a thinner beading wire. So I'm going to string my wire again through the bottom, and I'm going to hold it at the bottom here with my other hand. And this time I've numbered it, and you can see it's numbered backwards because you go counterclockwise. So I'm going to come up through, let me get enough wire off here that I can work. Okay. So we're going to come up around 1 from left to right, around 2 from left to right. You can tell this one's gotten a lot of wear and tear over the years. Number 3, left to right. Number 4, left to right. Number 5. And now I'm going to go around the outside. Be careful not to let go. Like I said, it will all just disappear. You start over. So keep a good hold on it until you get it anchored on. So when you go around that first peg, you want to go over the top of that bottom loop. And you got to let go a little bit from the bottom to give yourself the slack to be able to pull this bottom loop up over the top loop. And then it's anchored on and I can kind of let go and relax a little bit. You're going to take the wire on the outside of 2 now at the top. I believe there is a difference between left-handed and right-handed. I used to have a coworker that was left-handed, and I believe she did it a little bit differently than I did, possibly the opposite direction. But I personally am right-handed, so I'm definitely teaching you right-handed. And tug from the bottom. Great questions. You guys are giving me some good questions. And I'm just going to continue on till I get enough that we can take a look at it again. And I'll add some beads in here on like the 2nd or 3rd row. This is a knitting spool. And we are using our Softflex beading wire, which is a stainless steel beading wire. For any of you that have never heard of Softflex, it is a marine quality stainless steel. This particular one is 49 strands of steel braided together in a proprietary braid, and then it has a beautiful color nylon coating over the top of it. It's normally used for bead stringing, but I also use it for kumihimo and knitting on a spool and braiding and all sorts of other things where I expose the wire in the jewelry design. So I'm back to 1, so I think I'll start adding beads. So I'm going to go over the top, and then I'm just going to slide a bead up into the center between 1 and 2. And again, we're not going to actually finish a project today. I'm just going to show you some basics of knitting. So we're on our 5-peg knitting spool. Oh, I forgot to add one, didn't I? Here. If you need to back up, you can always back up too. Just take that loop and then add your bead and then wrap your wire around and then take that loop back up and over. I'm going to add a bead here. And make sure the bead stays in the center so it's in the same place throughout the design. Sharon says, I've used Softflex for hand knotting also. Yeah, it's a very flexible product. I personally do not usually knot Softflex, but what's great about it is that it's so strong and so durable that you can knot it and not lose any strength where it's knotted. So you can kind of see what the beads look like in their own individual sections. And now I'm going to keep going without beads for a little while because I don't have many on here. And we want to get enough of a length that we can do some comparison between the 3, the 4, and the 5. So we've done the 3, we've done the 4, and this one's going to be the 5. Isn't this garnet color so pretty? Look how pretty it is with that copper. I wouldn't have thought those two colors would work so well. Rochelle says, I'm right-handed, and when I taught crochet, I had to teach myself to crochet left-handed for my left-handed students. Basically, I did it backwards, but it worked. Yeah, I think if I understood correctly from my coworker, she does it the opposite direction. So she's going clockwise, if I understood correctly. I did not learn it left-handed, so I don't know for sure. That's probably a great point. If I teach this class more, I might come across a lefty eventually. So I probably should work that out, huh? If you find the wire is doing any of this where it's almost like it wants to curl, just let go of the spool and let it untwist, and that will straighten it back out. It's basically twisting as I go around the spool. It's twisting the wire. And so you don't want it to get twisted and tangled, so you just every once in a while drop your spool and let it kind of roll out. Look at that beautiful design that's going down the center. Jenny says, I just don't get knitting or crocheting. Like, you don't get how to do it, or you don't get why people do it. That could go either direction. I definitely am a knitter when I've done projects, but I have not been very good with crocheting. I've tried to learn how to crochet a zillion times, and it is not, it just doesn't compute with me very well. Maybe if I took an actual class, it would be better, but I just have a really tough time, but I do knit every once in a while. I'll knit a scarf or something. And then I definitely knit on the knitting spool. I've been doing this thing for many, many years. Oh, because you're left-handed. Is that why it's more difficult? Huh. That's so interesting. Yeah, they do. You can see the seed beads down there. Kristen said it. The seed bead pinner makes it easy to see the pattern. Sue says, I crochet but don't knit. I get knots when I knit. Isn't that funny that one of them can make so much sense to somebody and the other one not, and then it can be the opposite for someone else? So I'm just trying to get, again, a long enough length. This one takes the longest because it's 5 pegs, that we can compare and contrast the size between a 3 peg, a 4 peg, and a 5 peg. And did you guys see how easy it was to add those beads on? So you string them all on first, and then you just toss a bead between the 2 pegs before you pull your next loop. Nicole says, I find this very interesting. I've always loved making jewelry since I was a kid, and I love learning a new way to make jewelry and bracelets and stuff. I've never seen anything like this. Well, good. I'm so glad you joined us today and that you're learning something new. And Thomas says, quick tip for the fellas. My girlfriend was annoyed when I called her crocheting knitting. I finally figured out the best way to remember. Knitting has 2 T's. Oh, like the needles. Thank you for the piece at the end, Thomas, because I would have had no idea what you were talking about. Oh, I really want to learn bead crochet. I think I showed you guys when I came back from Tucson, I bought a bead crochet kit, and I haven't opened it yet, but I'm going to, because I want to bead crochet with soft flex. We have an old sample that someone made us before I worked for soft flex, so like 25 years ago, and it's bead crocheted using our soft flex 014. And so I've always been interested in seeing how that might work. And so one of these days, I am going to figure it out. And I always see Katie Wall from Fusion Beads does these gorgeous bead crocheted bracelets. I think they're so beautiful. So I have been very curious about that too. Okay, so that's probably long enough that we can get a good idea of the size difference between these. So again, you want to leave a pretty decent length. Of course, if you have a 3 peg, you have fewer fewer little loops to go through, so you don't need as long of a wire. But when you get to the 5 peg, leave a decent sized wire, because you're actually going to wrap it around here, and you still want enough wire that you can close off at the end too. And so I'm going to again take my wire end through the loop at 1 and through the loop at 2 and through the loop around 3. And you're going in the same direction that you were knitting in, so the wire stays in that same pattern that it was in originally. So Pamage says, glad you're demonstrating knitting. I have one with the 5 pegs, but I've never used it. Oh, good. I hope I'm giving you an opportunity to get excited about it. So I've gone around all 5 pegs. And now I can pull it off. I don't know why it's like a cloud went in front of the sun or something, and I'm missing all my sunshine in here right now. Okay, so now we've got our 5, so we can kind of see the difference in the sizing from a 3 to a 4 to a 5. You know, a 5 is going to be substantially, I wonder if I can get these all 3 around my wrist. This is going to be some real fiddling for my fiddle hands here. No, I can't do that. Not by myself. I can do this though. Okay, so you can see there's a real size difference between like a 3 and a 5. So if you like bigger jewelry, then I would suggest the 5. If you're kind of a middle range or just starting out, maybe a 4. And then, oh, look at brighter. Thank you, sun. And then a 3 over here is going to be your tiniest. So if you like daintier stuff, then you would go with the 3. And to see the beads a little bit better on a design where I did beads throughout the design, you can see it here. It's really fun. The other thing that people sometimes do is before you close this up, you can actually stuff beads inside here. Let me see if I have something I can stuff in there so we can see what it looks like. Seems like I must have something here. This one's kind of big, but let's see what this looks like. So you can actually put a bead in the center and then close it up. And you can actually string the beads if you want to keep them nice and straight inside of the center. It'll also keep your design really nice when you put beads in the center, because it keeps it puffed out like that, which is pretty cool. But you can either string it or you can just stuff them down in there. They're not going to come out if it's a large enough bead. Would it be easier to stuff beads as it's in the spool? Yes and no. It depends. The 5 peg hole isn't huge. This particular bead would fit. If you did anything bigger, sometimes it can be kind of hard to get it to go. It just depends on your bead size, I guess. But you can stuff, and then you can always move them like this, and then you can stuff in another one if you're doing it at the end like this. Okay, so that was our first thing I wanted to show, and then I also wanted to show all 3 of these colors together. So let's try that. So if you want to do 3 wires together, you can get some really, it's sort of like this chrysoprase turquoise one that I showed you at the beginning. You can get some real depth with the wire. You get long pieces out here, so we can do this one more time in style 1, and then we're going to switch over to style 2 and style 3 so you can see what those look like. And then I'm actually going to do cropped wire today too, which is similar but just a little bit different. Okay, so I've got my 3 trio colors from the Bloom Trio, and those are garnet, pink tourmaline, and tanzanite. It's a new trio that's available on our website now. And I'm going to take all 3 wires as if they're one wire together. And we'll do it on the 4-peg knitting spool. I'm going to send all 3 wires down the center as if it's one wire. I'm going to anchor all 3 wires in my hand, and then you're going to take all 3 wires always like it's one wire, go around the first peg, 9 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and then around the outside. So the big difference here is that you're always, it's a little harder to start. You're always using 3 at once. So I'm going to take all 3 from the bottom. You got to again, let go of some slack from down yonder. Pull it up and over, and now I'm cinched on, which is nice. But we'll be able to see how these colors sort of interact with each other, and they look really, really pretty. Move this bag of beads out of here. So I'm still doing style 1, but this time I'm doing it with 3 colors because I wanted you guys to see how this changes the way it looks. It is harder to work with 3 colors than 1, but look at how cool it makes the tanzanite pop. Because of the darker pinks and the pink tourmaline and the garnet, the tanzanite is probably going to be the front and center color here in this mixture. It's going to really pop out. Isn't that pretty? Oh. If you make a mistake, just back up and keep on going. Gently tug from the bottom over the top of the 3. I'm really gonna like how this turns out. So that's just a general idea of how you would do 3. You would just work right off the spool, and you would do all 3 of them at the same time. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop this off, as beautiful as it is and as much as I want to work with it. I'm going to pop it off so we can work on style 2 and style 3. I have videos, really good videos from Jewel School of all 3 of them. So, and those are located through the links that my coworkers have been adding in the comments section. But also if you go to our website, softluxcompany.com, and find the tips and tricks section, that's where you'll find all 3 of those. And this knitting spool discount is good through July 24th, as is the soft touch wire discount that we talked about earlier. You can get 10% off on your soft touch wire, any length, any diameter, until 7/24. And I just want to be able to pop it off so we can keep an eye on this. And it's a little challenging. Get this garnet to come out of here. It's wanting to go in the center. So the more wire you use, the more challenging. You know, you want to start out with a really simple project like the first one that I showed you that has just a single wire. Maybe then add some beads, do it in some different diameters, and then start working with multiple wires. Okay, so I think, oh, I didn't get all of them yet. One more, and then we're going to do style 2 next. So I'm just going from peg to peg, and I'm taking all 3 wires, stringing them through my loop, and then I'm able to pull it off. So in normal circumstances, I would have knitted much more than this. I would have knitted a full bracelet, but I wanted you to see how these colors can mix together and how that'll make the tanzanite just really pop when you add in some other colors. Okay, so we got that, and now we're gonna work on style 2. Okay, I found it easier, I think, to see the tanzanite on screen, so we're gonna use that one here on out. So I've got my tanzanite medium wire. You can do style 2 and style 3 with any diameter of soft flex as well, and any color that you choose. So I've got my 4-peg knitting spool. I'm in style 2. I'm going to go around each peg just like before. So I'm going counterclockwise, 12, 9, 6, 3. Instead of going around the outside, this time, style 2, I go around each peg again. So I'm doubling up. And I gotta turn, so 12 is facing me, and then I'm going to gently let go from the bottom, just like I normally do, to give myself a little slack, and then I'm gonna take this one up and over the top. Oh, and I lost it. Well, I guess maybe the problem is I didn't need to go around all of them. Let's start this over. I haven't done this one in a while. I know what I need to do. Okay, so here we go. Down the center, style 2 is wrap around 1, 2, 3, 4, and then just go around the first one. And then let go from the bottom a little bit. And then you can pull this up and over. And then you don't have to fidget with trying to keep it on there. I had wrapped around each one a second time, but you can do each one individually. You don't have to wrap around the whole thing and try to hold on to it. Okay, so I'm always going through the center, around the peg, through the center. So I'm following the same pattern that I did the first time. Instead of wrapping around the outside like I did in style 1, the outside like this, I'm actually wrapping around the whole peg again. And so this knitting style ends up looking like this design here. And this is actually done on a 4-peg. This is the turquoise and the copper mixed together. But it gives you sort of an inside out knitting shape. It doesn't have a big hollow center like knitting style 1 and knitting style 2. So it's kind of fun. It's very different than the other two. The other two are more similar. So that can give you an idea of what that ends up looking like. I know, Sue was like, why is this not working? So I can keep going for a little bit here, but I think we kind of have a good idea of what this looks like. You're just wrapping around, taking it from the bottom to the top. And again, there's more thorough videos for every single style on our website. So let's pop this one off. I don't have much tanzanite left, so I'm going to switch to my pink tourmaline here. And now we're going to do style 3. So with style 3, we're going to go down the center and we're going to anchor our wire in place again with our thumb. And style 3 is the double stitch of style 1. And so it's a lot more like style 1. So I'm going to go around and around and around and around. And then the second step is I'm actually going to take this wire and run it around all 4 pegs till I get back to the first peg. So now I've got 3 wires on the first peg. I'm going to hold it together on the back end so that, and give myself a little slack from the bottom, just like all the other ones. I'm going to take this bottom loop, the very first loop, around that first peg up and over the 2 wires and gently tug. And then I'm anchored on and I can kind of keep going. So I'm going to wrap around the top every single time. I'm going to take the bottom wire over the top. Wrap around the top. Take the bottom wire up and over the top. And I'm just going to keep going. Up and over. And this is where it gets more difficult because you're starting to actually need to split the wires. The wires are going to go together, and you just always split them in half and take the bottom one. So see how they're sort of together down there? Split it in half, take the bottom one, up and over. And as you keep going, this is going to be a more, because there's more wire running through it, this is going to be have more wire. It's going to be thicker. This is a double knit. So you can see it really holds and retains that tubular shape a lot better than the single knit. This was the single knit. Because it just has a little bit more of a tighter structure to it. So I end up doing this knit probably the most frequently. It is the hardest of the 3, so I wouldn't suggest that's where you start unless you're in like an instructed class with me. But this is the one that I actually teach regularly when I get an opportunity because it is a little difficult to do that knit, but it gives you such a beautiful tube. I really like how it ends up turning out. Okay, so I've got a few more designs to show you, and then we're going to jump into some craft wire with the knitting spool, and then I will be done chit-chatting with you guys for the day. So my old coworker Jamie Hogsett did this design years ago. She knitted a big long section using I think it's red jasper and black onyx together. And then you can see she put the seed beads in there as well. And then what's really cool is the front of the design. She actually made these sort of like bracelets. I think you could probably almost wear them as a bracelet with clasps on either side, so you could actually change out the front if you wanted to. I think this was a free project idea on our old website, but probably hasn't been put up on the new website yet. But it's a really fun design. And then I did this years ago too with some of the copper chain that some of you've been nabbing in the live sale. And so I knitted, this is knitting style 2, and I put a bead over the top and then attached to the chain on the 2 sides. And this is copper and turquoise, how copper and turquoise look together. You can do that on a 3-peg knitting spool. It's just going to be thinner. So that's really the difference between the 3, the 4, and the 5-peg knitting spool, is the size of what comes out is substantially different. And I think I've shown you everything but the craft wire one. Ooh, one last thing before we go. Before we move on to craft wire, I wanted to show you how to attach to a clasp. Before I get going here too far, let me find my crimping pliers. Here somewhere. There we are. I'm just going to use my regular crimping pliers today. I tend to use a crimp cover usually. You can see where I've attached. So a crimp and a crimp cover, because the cones often have like a fairly large hole. So if you use the magical, I would worry it's going to slide inside that hole and create problems. Kathleen, the next live sale is August 8th at 1 p.m. And I'll go over all the upcoming videos here shortly. So I'm going to get out a 2x2 millimeter crimp tube, a soft flex crimp tube, of course. And I had taken out some cones. I grabbed these beautiful cones that I have from Saki Silver that I hadn't used yet. And then I have a nice clasp. We used to sell these clasps on our website, but they're currently sold out. Okay, so I'm going to take the end of my wire. There's always a little bit of a wonky area here, and that's why I like to use a cone. And so what I'll do is I'll actually pull the end of the wire through the cone and then pull some of that design into the cone. And that'll help to make it look a little bit less wonky. You guys all see that? And then I'm going to take this wire. Oh, and that's a really big. I might have to even do a bead or something there. Let me see if I have a bead to fish out. I have got a really perfect bead here if this works. A little tanzanite colored bead to slide in here. There we go. And then all I would do is I would take my 2x2 millimeter crimp tube, slide it onto the wire through the toggle clasp, back into the wire, and then just gently tug this down. You want to get it tight enough that it feels secure and there isn't a lot of looseness, but you don't want it to be so tight that things can't move around. You always want to look for movability in your design. Straighten out your wires the best you can inside that crimp tube so you can get a nice straight connection. And these crimping pliers, if you haven't used them before, if you're brand new to beading, the front here, or the one here on the end, is round. The one in the center there has just a little tooth. We call that part the crimper. So I'm going to crimp first with the crimper and compress, which will give me what looks like a little divot in my crimp tube. And then I'm going to turn it on its side in the rounder. Let's see if I can get a good angle. See how the dent is facing out now? I'm going to compress, and then I like to go around and around it 6 or 7 times, just really tightening it down into the nylon coating. You don't have to use a lot of force. You just want to really make sure it's nice and cinched down. And then you can take your cutters, get in nice and close, and trim. And then you've got your connection. Now you don't have to do a clasp because this is springy. So like I was showing you at the beginning with this guy, I actually just used a connector, and then I can just roll this over my wrist to wear it. So you can do like a stone. Sometimes I'll use a stone and I'll pass the wire through in both directions and crimp on either side. So there's lots of options for closing this off for sure. But this is one really easy option. And then normally what I would do is add a crimp cover over that. So we'll do that real fast too. With a 2x2 millimeter crimp tube, I'm going to use a 3 millimeter crimp cover. So this is like a little open-faced bead. I'm going to hold it inside the rounder of my crimping pliers, and then I'm just going to slide it up over the top of my crimp and just gently compress. And when you're compressing, you want to kind of look at it and make sure that those two seams are coming together and not twisting. If they twist, it won't look nearly as good. And then I like to come in right at the edge of one side and tuck, and then right at the edge of the other side and tuck. And that ensures that it's nice and tight around that crimp tube. And then you've got your finished connection there. If you could see off screen, it could look like a cool little bracelet. Okay, so now I'm going to switch over to craft wire, which I don't know that I've ever shown on a video before. I did a project for step-by-step wire jewelry years ago, and I have worn this project a lot, so it's definitely gotten a little dented over the years. But you can see I added beads, and then I also did crystals down the center as well. And I did 2 different gauges of craft wire on that, I think. So let's get into this. I'm going to use the 4-peg knitting spool again. You take this off and we'll get all of our wire out of here. So Softflix also manufactures craft wire, not just beading wire. We make it in 18 gauge to 28 gauge. I'm going to be using on the thinner side 28 gauge, but I know that some folks use 24, 26 on the knitting spool with the sort of pattern that I'm going to be showing you. I'm using the thinnest, and then I'm also using the silver plated non-tarnished silver, so it's a bright silver color. This is actually a copper wire. It has silver plating, and then it has a polyurethane coating that makes it not tarnish over time and keeps it that bright silvery, fun silvery color. I'm going to take some wire off the spool. You want to be careful, especially with the thinner gauges, when you are unraveling some wire. Sometimes this whole spooled wire will unravel. And so just keep a thumb on it as you're taking some wire off. I'm going to take a good amount off of here. And then you can go ahead and anchor it down with that clip again. There's one other tool I really want to use, which is these nylon jaw pliers. These have a nylon tip on them, and you can actually pull the wire really nice and clean and straight. And that's a nice step to start with. So you're using a nice clean straight wire as you're knitting, because it will come a little wobbly off the spool. Okay. A never-ending supply of Softflix wire is on my wish list. Yes, after 19 years, I have been very fortunate. I have lots and lots of Softflix, and I'm very grateful and thankful that I have it at my fingertips all the time. It's been really nice. Okay, so I'm going to take my wire and I'm going to send it down the center just like before with the beading wire. We're going to do style 1 again. So I'm going to anchor down. Now, craft wire, because it's copper, is much more delicate than Softflix. Softflix you can yank and yank and yank and it won't work, harden, and break. This is much more tender because it will snap. If you move this back and forth enough in the same place, it's going to snap, work harden, and snap free. So you've got to treat it really delicately when you're doing this. So I've got my little tail and I've got it secured with my thumb here. I'm going to go around the top one, 12, through the center over to 9, through the center over to 6, through the center over to 3, and then I'm going to twist so I'm in front of the very first peg. I'm going to wrap this around the top of that peg. I'm going to gently let go from the bottom. Now the difference with craft wire is you have to run the same amount of slack through the whole thing. So what I like to do is I pull my slack out to the edge of the knitting spool and then I lift it up and over with my thumb. And I don't pull from the bottom. So now it's anchored on. I'm not pulling from the bottom because I need to keep that slack there. So when I go to the next one, I add my second wire and I pull out to the edge of the knitting spool. I'm pulling the slack from here to here, and that's the slack that I'm going to carry forward throughout the project. And again, you want to be delicate, especially with a 28 gauge craft wire. It's very, very thin. But once it's woven, it's beautiful. And you can do more than one wire. In fact, this one here is, I believe it's like charcoal and non-tarnish. You can just kind of see the two wires there. It just gave it a little more depth, having the two different colors. And around the outside, and then you just gently tug out to the edge of your knitting spool and then lift it up and over to the center. You can add beads the same way we did with the beading wire. I did it in both ways on this design. So I added beads by stringing all the beads onto the wire first, and then placing them in between the pegs. And then I also added beads down the center. I don't know if you can see that little sparkle sort of peeking out. And again, this poor thing, I've worn this for a few years now heavily. So it has gotten a little, it's basically cinching down over the beads that are in the center. But isn't it so pretty? I love this bracelet. That's why I wear it so much. That's why I wear it, because it's so unique. I mean, just really very unique and kind of heavy duty, because it's got these beautiful clear crystals and wire. I love this design. Yeah, so that's it with craft wire. So let me look. Oh. Are you guys still there? Oh, it looked like it was going to reconnect on me. Let me look over my notes and make sure that they seem to be doing a better job. You can kind of see how it's coming out. That I covered everything. Yeah, I think I got everything. Yes, I think I got everything. So I'm going to flip you guys down fast. I can say bye. Thanks for joining me today to talk all about our 3 knitting spools. You can buy one at www.softluxcompany.com and get 10% off until 7/24. You can also get 10% off on your soft touch wire while you're there until that same date. The next videos next week are our Neon Nights kit. Nile is doing a video at 3:30 p.m. Central Time, his time zone in Oklahoma, and that will be on Tuesday, July 23rd. We'll try to send a reminder before the video. And then I'll be doing my Neon Nights kit on Wednesday, July 24th at my normal time, 1 p.m. Pacific time. On August 1st, I'll be doing a Jessie James Beads Magical Mystery Box again, and that will be at 1 p.m. Pacific time. And then our next SoftLux Live sale is on Wednesday, August 8th at 1 p.m. Pacific time. So I'm looking forward to all of those fun videos that are coming up. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about the knitting spool. As always, if you have questions, you can always click on Ask Sara on our website to ask me your questions, and I will definitely answer or leave them here in the comments, and we'll try to get to them when we can. I really appreciate you guys spending some time with me today, and if you don't have a knitting spool, I hope you go out and get one, and if nothing else, check out this beautiful bloom trio that's on the website now, because I think it's a really fun set of colors to work with, especially here in the summer. All right, talk to you guys later. Bye, guys.